I know. A guy that looks like me talking about the Horde. But let's lower the pitchforks. It's getting a bit too blue around here. That's better. Hey, we're chill now. There's an armistice and everything.
I'm not done, Valdivinox.
Everything Horde. Because they've been in a bit of an interesting spot ever since Battle for Azeroth.
Don't go anywhere.
Between the second siege of Orgrimmar and Ulta 4 in the position of War Chief, today's Horde looks totally different than the roided up orcs of yesteryear. And through all these changes, I think we might have lost a bit of that characteristic edge that makes the Horde so appealing to the masses. But before we dig into that, let's review some of the history of the Horde and try to figure out what that core appeal even is. It all starts on an alien world called Draenor, where the Burning Legion just came up with the clever idea to gaslight some orcs into doing a war.
You're my wife? For real? Yes, now, kill the space goats.
And after swarming their own planet, it was time to get to the real matter at hand, attacking little old Azeroth and her human kingdoms. After building the Dark Portal, with the help of the corrupted Guardian Medivh, the Orcish Horde would attack Azeroth.
Corrupted? I think the term you're looking for is woke.
Man, Warcraft has been space magic fantasy stuff from the onset, huh? This is going to kick off the first two Warcraft games, where the Alliance, not really the one we know yet, and the Horde, also not the one we know yet, would battle it out for Azeroth.
Oh, look at that old map.
The Eastern Kingdoms. But
damn, look at that old map. Damn. Look at that. When a whole continent was named Azeroth. Wow. I've seen this before. Ulduar is its own entire fucking continent. That's wild, bro. That's wild. 1999. But the Undermine, Nazjatar, Maelstrom, the Tomb of Sargeras, it's all been there. Interesting how the Maelstrom is over here. And the Nazjatar is right there. Maybe the Maelstrom is seen as a larger thing. Ulduar is definitely Khaz-Algar now. I agree. Do you see right there where it says the Maw? You see right there where it says the Maw? Do you see that? It says the Maw right there on the map. The dots probably represent the Maelstrom. Yes, they probably do. I didn't see that, actually. I didn't see those. Huh.
The Eastern Kingdoms. But after those first two games, the Horde wouldn't be looking too
That's fucked
great.
up, Boomken.
You see, after the second war,
Rip
the Horde
Dreamcast.
had essentially fallen apart. And with Draenor obliterated from Ner'zhul getting a bit spicy with the portals, the orcs had nowhere to go. But with them still very much being on Azeroth, they were now trapped in a world that saw them as evil invaders, which would see to it they pay for the sins of the past. Though at this point, some of the orcs stuck in the human internment camps weren't even alive during the war. They were paying the price of their parents' crimes. But hey, one of these orcs has broken free thanks to a human.
That's how it always goes. His name's Goel.
Thrall. He's gonna...
No! His name's Goel, god damn it! No, it's wrong. It's both.
Weren't even alive during the war. They were paying the price of their parents' crimes.
As it usually goes.
One of these orcs has broken free thanks to a human. His name's Thrall. He's gonna run off and found a new horde.
He's
one that is determined to find a place for his kind in a world that we're stranded on. Along the way, he's gonna befriend the trolls and the Tarn, marking the start of the modern-day horde. This is the core of the foundation of the horde.
So you're telling me that we can thank Thrall? You're telling me Thrall brought them unity and tried to find peace? You're telling me, dude, Thrall, Green Jesus, that's my war chief.
They're a coalition of disparate tribes trying to carve out a peaceful existence for their people in a world dominated by the Alliance. From orcs to blood elves, every member of the Horde has been wronged by the Alliance. Well, except Darren. Those guys are just so chill, no one has a problem with them. They're just here because they like the vibe. As put so well by Lor'themar after the Purge of Dalaran, the Horde exists because of the Alliance. Through thick and thin, the Horde sticks together. Because without the mutual aid of its members, they know the Alliance would pick them apart whenever they became an inconvenience. Now, you might say the Horde has nothing to worry about. The Alliance are good guys.
You might say the Horde is nothing. You are all nothing!
If anything, the Horde are the villains. And honestly, I get it. Another core part of the Horde, whether we recognize it or not, is that they appear quite villainous on a surface level. Between being the red side...
What do you mean? Demonic Burning Legion orcs? What do you mean? Mindless abomination undead? Huh. What do you mean? Fell-addicted blood elves? No, no, no! Savage trolls? Primally worshipping violent Loa? No, no, no! Not the Horde, no!
kind of red versus blue, the spiky buildings and the monstrous members, any new player to the game is going to assume that this is the evil faction before they know anything else about the lore. But this surface level reading of the Horde is also a cool part of their identity. Getting to overcome your initial impressions of the Horde as a player and come to understand them for what they really are is a large part of what makes the earliest lore so interesting.
That's actually a really interesting thing to like. I haven't really stopped to think too much about that because in my early days, that's so interesting to think about when I first started playing. How did I perceive the Horde and the Alliance? I wouldn't say that I perceived them as evil, but I perceived them as maybe less capable of unity. And the more that I played, the more that I found that to not be true. That that they're not warmongering, that they're, how do I put this? That they're, you know what I think really helps me put this in perspective? Final Fantasy XIV really puts this into perspective because you start that game referring to the more bestial peoples of the world as beast tribes, beast men, and you're not very considerate of them. And you kind of see them, you know, with their stick huts and stuff as like, well, frankly, you see them as lesser creatures. And one of the big lessons about Final Fantasy XIV is that's not the case. That in fact, some of our greatest technological advancements, like the airship, for instance, was actually built originally by some bestial peoples working with what people would call like civilized peoples, and they invented flight together, and it's been lost to time, and our arrogance and like prejudices against one another have kind of blinded us from that truth. And so I think I now see World of Warcraft in a similar way, where like maybe from the perspective of the Alliance, you see goblins or trolls or orcs or whatever, and you're kind of thinking of them as beast men. They're lesser in some ways. And I think that as time goes on, you kind of realize that like orcs aren't all bloodthirsty, like ravenous, like crazies, you know, like, and I feel like you find that out about really, I think most of the Horde races, like when you first find out about the Forsaken and like you're looking at them and you're like, you know, but then you meet Lily and Voss and you're like, this one is different. Like there's something about this one here. She's different. And it starts to change your mind. It starts to change your mind about like who and what they are. And you start to realize that they're not so different. Like they might look different and they might speak a different tongue and live in like a different house, but you're the same. And that's a reflection of humanity, of all the different races and colors and creeds and sexual orientations and all sorts of traditions and whatnot. We have this mindset of division, you know, where we're constantly in opposition to one another and are so blinded by our hatreds and prejudices that we don't allow ourselves to realize that like most of the religions in the world are actually worshiping the same omnipotent force. They just have different names for it, and so they kill each other over it, so that they can use religion as a means to take land. Because they don't actually give a shit about the religious aspect of it. They're just using it as a fucking ploy so that they can get what they want. But what do I know?
That's the twist of the first couple games. And man, does that twist always work wonders. Shoot, just look at Halo. It makes you like the aliens in the second game, and that leveled up the storytelling tenfold. But there's another side of this coin. Because this initial impression of the Horde continues to impact how characters and players view them. If you made a list of all the bad that the Horde Alliance has done, you find it's actually pretty easy to make a one.
Not exhaustive, just for demonstrative purposes.
Continues to impact how characters and players.
It's an
view
interesting
them.
cutscene right there with Jaina,
If
by
you
the way.
made a list of all the bad that the Horde.
So, Garithos, Goblin Attack, Labor Camps, Unwelcome to Forsaken, Bigotry to the Nightborn, Forcing Trolls off their lands, Dalen Proudmoore. How about the entirety of the Night Elves? He said it's not exhaustive. Camp Taraja, yeah, Tarajo, Purge of Dalaran, Stormheim Offensive. Yeah, then on the Horde side, you got Teldrassil, Wrathgate, The Gathering, Garrosh again. Garrosh did a lot. Old Horde Raising Undead. Garrosh again. Garrosh did a lot. Oh, shit.
Is done.
And what's funny is, Garrosh, I would say, is one of the most blind Horde leaders ever. Like, Garrosh was so blinded by his idyllic view of the Horde that he was willing to eradicate anyone who did not fall in line with that. Like, Garrosh is a fucking idiot. But again, product of his upbringing, you know, and everything that's occurred with him. It's one of those things, like, whose fault is it really? How much is Thrall to blame for what happened with Garrosh? Garrosh seems to think quite a lot of it is you know, Thrall needs to take responsibility for, but I digress.
You find it's actually pretty easy to make a one-to-one list. I have to imagine Blizzard has done this on purpose over the years. However, unless you're a die-hard Horde stan, you'd probably hold the impression that the Horde is the one doing the most bad. This is because the core conceit of the two factions colors how we view their present actions. The Alliance is the good guys, with a few bad apples that stain their pristine legacy, while the Horde are the ones who are starting off as the bad guys that need to
Have a
redeem
couple.
themselves.
Yes.
The
I like that. That's very nicely said. I totally agree with that. Well said.
Can walk off war crimes. We don't question whether or not the Alliance should continue to exist. Sometimes they have people go off the handle, but come on, they're the Alliance. We can't blame the whole thing for what a few maniacs do. Meanwhile, those ruffians on the Horde, every time something bad happens, everyone starts to question if all this Horde stuff is a bad idea. Between Proudmoors and Hellscreams, both factions have their fair share of evils. But when one faction has been painted from the start as the ones needing to redeem themselves, the Horde is the one that looks like they're the ones lying about their good intentions.
You know, it's funny, because I feel like that can almost apply to Sargeras and the Titan Pantheon as well. It's almost like from the absolute rip, we were told that Sargeras is the bad guy, and everything about him makes us believe and lean towards, like, he's more so the bad guy. Whereas the Titans are the orderly, they're the nice. Oh, couldn't have been us. No. We're noble and just in our cause. Sargeras is the evil. And how ironic that Sargeras and the Legion would be responsible for the Orc's presence.
And this also means they spend
Old
a lot
gods
of
too. Anything that's bad. See, even I say it. Even I fucking say it.
screen time apologizing for stuff. To be fair, the Horde is the one that looks like they're the ones lying about their good intentions. And this also means they spend a lot of screen time apologizing for stuff. To be fair, I think this puts their writing in between a rock and a hard place. Because having this initial look of being the bad guys is a core tenet of the Horde. They just don't work as a faction unless that is part of their identity. So, how do we move forward with the Horde?
See, that I disagree with. I think that the Horde, like everything, has grown and changed and adapted. And this, I'm not saying that this is all Sixsten says or thinks, because he's going to elaborate on this. But that mindset that we must continue to adhere with the pre-established and very rigid in some people's minds guidelines like that, I think is not good for the game. That's why people think that the game is like going woke now, because they can't they can't accept that like there's going to be characters that grow and that change, and that the identity of the Horde does not have to be one of evil. It doesn't have to be. Their existence is not necessitated by that, in my opinion. I think anyone that actually plays the game knows that the Horde isn't evil. I think it's like a really early game type of perspective to think that. But I think for most of us that have been playing this game for like years, we know that the Alliance isn't evil and that the Horde's not evil. That's not really how that works. So, I don't know. I don't really agree with the idea that the Horde has to be identifiably, like, seemingly evil. I think at this point, if anything, it's kind of blows my mind that, like, this isn't where people go, but, like, all signs point towards a disillusion of both factions. Like, into probably one single faction. Like, the whole theme of World of Warcraft is unity and harmony, recently especially. Finding the harmony between two seemingly opposing and, you know, conflicting forces, but that doesn't always have to be the case. So if you guys really think that we're going to fight forever and that the Horde and the Alliance are never going to, like, get rid of that at some point, I'd be very surprised for that to be the case. So, yeah, I foresee them joining. I mean, we have done so repeatedly. Over and over, every time we face great threats, we come together. And I just don't think that that's gonna... I don't think that that theme is going away.
Horde. Well, I think they need to close themselves off a bit. While this does run counter to some of the greater themes of the last few years, I think in order to maintain the Horde in a post-BFA Azeroth, they need to act a little more standoffish. What do I mean by this? Well, now that the factions are appeased, we see them cooperate from time to time, like during the recent Gilneas reclamation. During this questline, we see Callie and Lillian, along with the player character of their Horde, help the Gilneans retake the city.
Right.
While there's another conversation to be had about how Gilnean players weren't happy to retake the city from Deus Ex Crusade, or how WoW's narrative has to suffer from playable content needing to be available to both factions, we're just going to focus today on how Horde players felt during this questline. And from what I've gathered...
It wouldn't matter if everyone could have, like, a similar experience because things weren't so separate because of Horde and Alliance.
The average Horde fan isn't pleased. I believe that when your entire identity is belonging to a faction of survival, going to help out your oppressors and apologize the entire time you do it can feel disempowering, which isn't the feeling you want if you picked Red Team at character select.
Yeah, but isn't it funny how that ends up being the case, though? Yeah, it's kind of a shitty feeling, but why don't we look at that narratively from that aspect of, like, maybe there's a little bit of a message there about the guilt that often accompanies people in these situations, because it's very real. Final Fantasy taught me that with Fordola, and with mostly with Fordola. So, you know, it's one of those things. You might never really be accepted. That's part of the fucking sad truth. And you might find yourself bending the knee even when you're trying to do the right thing and being manipulated as a result. And unfortunately, that's reality. You know, it sucks.
So I think for future Horde stories, the Horde should still be pretty skeptical of the Alliance. And over the course of the next few years, while fighting mutual enemies, we can build a satisfying trust between the two factions. The most important factor is that this is done over time. It's already been like in the process of, I feel like that's been happening already since Legion, since Kata. Heel turn within an expansion or two invalidates the existence of the Horde.
Really since Wrath, like since we united to fight the Lich King. I mean,
I get that may sound like a retread, but so is a second Siege of Orgrimmar. Over time, having a heel turn within an expansion or two invalidates the existence of the Horde. I get that may sound like a retread, but so is a second Siege of Orgrimmar. With BFA, we're basically back to square one of getting these two armies to get along. Now, I'm going to propose a rewrite of the Gilneas Reclamation, because this is our first real taste of a post-BFA Horde. We can do this as a sort of exercise in how the core principles of the Horde can work under the restrictions we've been given. Those restrictions being that the Alliance and Horde need to work together, as Blizzard has limited
Warcraft 3
resources
too,
to develop
yeah,
content,
true.
and we
To
need
foretell
all players
yourself.
to engage. This does mean that the Scarlet Crusade is going to stay, and yes, I know, but I get why Blizzard pulled them out again for this. They're an easy punching bag. But as the start of this rewrite, we're going to connect the Gilneas Reclamation to another recent questline, the Forsaken Heritage Quest. For those who missed out, the Scarlet Crusade also popped up near Lordaeron, and the Forsaken had to kick them out as part of game.
Well, I don't think I knew that. Don't think I've done this.
Their sick new drip. I think this gives us a good starting point to establish why the Horde is at Gilneas, and also more firmly establishes why the Scarlets are in Gilneas to begin with. We can imagine that the Scarlets have been in Gilneas for some time, knowing that the Forsaken had pulled out and it took until recently for Gen to decide to go back. With them staging an attack on Lordaeron, perhaps Gilneas is their new stronghold of power that they had launched that assault from. After defending Lordaeron, the Horde Forsaken could have continued to push them back, all the way to their nest. This gives a better motivation for the Forsaken to help with the reclamation, instead of solely being sad puppies being really sorry for kicking them out in the first place. Remember, the Horde are the oppressed. They have more than enough reason to be soured towards the humans and their cushy castles. With this change in perspective, the Alliance and Horde could do the tried and true temporary truce and work together to spill some scarlet blood.
Didn't you do the Forsaken Heritage quest on stream? I'm like 95% sure you did. Maybe, because I think I have the armor on my Forsaken. Maybe I did do it. It's just so long ago. It's been a long time. Must have been. Because I think I have the armor.
With the Alliance regaining their city and the Forsaken
I've done
getting
Gilneas,
revenge
yeah.
against those bigoted towards their people, a more natural appreciation
I've done both. I've done the Forsaken questline and Gilneas.
between the forces could build over the course of
But it's
to
been
spill
so
some
long.
scarlet blood to
Sorry.
the humans and their cushy castles. With this change in perspective, the Alliance and Horde could do the tried and true temporary truce and work together to spill some scarlet blood. With the Alliance regaining their city and the Forsaken getting revenge against those bigoted towards their people, a more natural appreciation between the forces could build over the course of its reclamation. Something that allows the Horde to work towards a new peaceful future without simply letting go of what makes them who they are. Real quick though, I want to make the disclaimer that I don't think I'm some sort of better writer or anything than Blizzard. I'm just a guy that makes a couple YouTube videos. I wanted to engage with the storyline in this way as an exercise to experiment with a different approach to modern day Horde storytelling.
I mean, it's not that different, I guess, from what I said about Sylvanas, and how they should have gone about using her soul fragment as the means by which Anduin was being mind-controlled and left Arthas the fuck out of it. But, you know, like Sixsten says, I don't claim to be like some superior writer, it's just a different way that's a little more developed, means a little bit more. So I kind of feel like that's what he's saying here, is like, it's easier to draw that correlation if you can just like fill that out a little bit, considering the meaning and the opportunity is there, but we're kind of like skirting around it for what, you know?
As I still think the most important Horde stories are still to be told. While the overall community likes to attack Blizzard's writing, I think
Superior to Denuser doesn't take much? I disagree with that, actually. I bet most WoW fans couldn't write a story better than Steve Denuser could. I know, what a controversial thing to say. It's almost like that guy is like a career storied narrative designer, and we're not. Whoa. It's almost like that guy has almost as much experience making video games as I've been alive, which is kind of insane. So I'd like to say that I think that Steve Denuser's writing for World of Warcraft and the way that he tried to make that work, not so great. But do I think Steve Denuser is just a bad writer? No. No. I think that Zoval conceptually is pretty interesting. The Primus, if what they were going to do with the Primus is true, then that's pretty fucking interesting. They just decided not to, and I don't really understand why. And so it comes off as really shitty, but the groundwork for something else is definitely laid there, and they chose not to do it. So, pretty unfortunate.
I think it's important to recognize that between development.
You guys realize that, like, half of your guys' favorite quotes from World of Warcraft were written by Steve Denuser, right? You guys know Steve Denuser wrote the Whispers of Il'gynoth, right? You know those whispers that inspired me and thousands of other people to start looking into the game's storyline more deeply? You guys know he wrote that? So maybe we should give a little bit more respect on that name, just a little bit, considering that we have been speculating about shit that he wrote for years, and you didn't even realize it. I'm sorry, we're gonna have to move on from this discussion. My fucking brain is falling apart.
Pipelines
Inside
and
my
a myriad
fucking
of other
head.
things that happen in the corporate world, there's a lot that can get left between the lines, and hindsight is always 20/20. So let's try to act respectful towards Blizzard's writers in the comment section. I get I'm hurting cats here, but let's give it a try. But to return to the matter
Good
at
luck.
hand, as we move into future expansions that will more heavily involve the Horde, after a brief break of Shadowlands and Dragonflight.
And here, let me just drop a little knowledge bomb on you, bro. Most of y'all motherfuckers, and I'm not gonna say y'all, but a lot of people out there A lot of people, they didn't give a flying fuck about the story before Shadowlands anyway. Don't pretend like all of a sudden you fucking care. You weren't paying attention in Legion. You weren't paying attention in Warlords. You weren't paying attention in Mr. Pandaria. Get off your fucking high horse and stop pretending like you fucking cared 10 years ago. Because you know what? You fucking didn't. Okay? So boo-hoo. Cry me a fucking river. You didn't follow anyway. The only fucking thing you cared about was Warcraft 3, Arthas fucking Menethil. Boo-hoo. My crybaby boo. Don't cry, Arthas. It'll be okay. Fuck off.
Fight. I think now is a good time for a bit of introspection on what we want to see out of the modern day Horde. It's important that we don't sand them down into just a red alliance.
Oh, the story's so bad now. Sorry.
It's a Dragonflight.
I'm trying to let Sixsten
give it a
speak.
try. But to return to the matter at hand, as we move into future expansions that will more heavily involve the Horde, after a brief break of Shadowlands and Dragonflight, I think now is a good time for a bit of introspection on what we want to see out of the modern day Horde. It's important that we don't sand them down into just a red alliance, and make sure we hold on to that grit and determination to eke out a future that makes them so appealing. I want to hear from you all in the comments. What draws you to the Horde? Is it the aesthetic? Do you relate to their themes? Or perhaps you want to revel in being seen as a bad guy?
Oh, it's that cold banshee bussy. All we need is a microwave and it'll all be taken care of. That's what Oryx taught me years ago. He said, just nuke her for 30 seconds. You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Let me know. I hope this video can spark discussion on where we want to see Azeroth's most complex faction go.
You ever got head from someone who drank something cold, chat? That's what it's like to have...
Before we wrap this up, I need to thank my Patreons. Thank you to Marianne, whose transmog matches so well, I didn't even notice it's not a full set. Zik.exe, showing us what a peak mage looks like. Coda, a Pyro that I wouldn't want to cross.
It's a joke, chat.
5891, who's just fiending to land a death strike. And Maria's Bomb, the most tree-loving night elf this side of the mail.
The joke.
Also, Pippiny Peanut.
Finish the goddamn sentence.
Reach out to me on Patreon so I can add your character. Anyways, this has been Six. Make sure to subscribe.
If it works, it works.
I'll see you guys next time.
We need Jesus. Hey, good video by Sixsten. Sorry I talk over it so fucking much. But guys, show some love on this video. Give some likes. Show the love to Sixsten if you're not subscribed. And yeah, good video. Good video. I think it is good to like kind of reflect on the Horde and how they've changed over time, and maybe how I think one thing that, not that anything he said was invalid, but one of the things that I appreciated the most out of what Sixsten said was that there is, I think, a kind of a general grittiness that's kind of associated with the Horde. And I think that it is a very valid complaint to kind of feel like that grittiness has kind of been lost. Like, you can still work together. You can still fight for, like, the goodness of the cosmos or the survival of the cosmos and still be gritty and hardened and, you know, a little more savage, you know? I think the truth is however, is that many of the characters that we have around, they're just not necessarily that. And forcing them to be something that characteristically also doesn't make sense for them is, you know, not good writing either, just for the sake of the Horde. But I think it is good to discuss and consider for those reasons. So, I play both. I play Horde and Alliance, and I find that they are, for the most part, very, very similar. I even think that the Alliance has had some very gritty, hardened characters in it as well, like, I don't know, Varian Rin. So, you know, Varian Rin, especially as Logosh, certainly could have fit in with an idealistic Horde. I could say that much. And it seems like Anduin Rin is kind of leaning towards that grittiness just a little bit as well. And hopefully not forgetting the lessons of patience, which he taught to his father. So I think there's a lot of opportunities still there for like the characterization. Here's my thing. It's like, it's like, in a way, it's almost like trying to identify a whole country based on like a couple key components from that country. And I know that like the Alliance and the Horde aren't like countries, but they're factions based on alliances on both sides, really, between disparate races and people and I want to say individuals are not, they are not the entirety of the organization which they are a part of. So while you may have different factions that are part of the Horde, not all of the Horde is the same. It's like saying all blank people are evil because of a minor terrorist group that's being associated with them, right? I feel like you could apply that to, I don't want to say anything, but it's conceptually similar. Yeah. Like, you know, not every Christian is an overbearing jerk who doesn't allow you to believe in what you want to believe in. And not every American is a fat slob who eats nothing but fast food. Like, obviously individuals exist. So I think personally, it's kind of annoying, even to an extent, when the overarching view of a country or group of people is applied to individuals with insufficient evidence. I feel like that might be what we call prejudices, but I don't know if that's the right word for that. Because then it's like you're basing it off of a very generalized view, not actually the individual, and making assumptions about them based on what they're a part of rather than who they are. Now, I guess that there are instances in where if you're a part of a certain organization, let's say you're for the extreme sake, let's say you're a Scarlet Crusader. Is there a higher likeliness that you're going to be a bad dude if you're a part of the Scarlets? Yeah, probably. But does it mean that every single person in the Scarlets is inherently some evil person who sought to do evil things for evil reasons? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. There are people that are just terrified of the undead. Like, they're terrified of it. They're terrified. They're abominations. They're the shambling walking corpses of their past family. They're terrified of them. Does it make it okay to just eradicate them? No. But is there some perspective that exists there for why some of the Scarlets feel the way that they do? Yes. Yeah, the cycle of abuse is a very real thing, even on the scale of nations and cultures. Abso-fucking-lutely. Absolutely. Yeah, something I've always valued is kindness, acceptance, communication, and transparency. Well, that's what I'm trying to point out. There's people out there that would say that you're a pussy for that, which is like crazy to me. I was shocked how much I talked about the faction divide from a third-person story perspective, but a lot of people got very defensive about their factions as if they're actually members. Yeah, that's kind of why I think it's funny. Like, I don't really associate my character's identity with either Horde or Alliance. I'm of the opinion that they should have been dissolved a long time ago, but it doesn't really matter, I guess. But, you know, yeah, I don't really align myself with either one, so not anymore. I just don't see value in it. After having played both, I just don't see the value in it. There's things that both sides do that I don't fucking like. That I don't want anything to do with. I disagree, just because I liked World PvP. You can have PvP without having two directly opposing factions. Have you ever played Final Fantasy? Have you ever played RuneScape? Problem is, that's not the WoW we grew up with. So basically, what I'm saying is, it sounds like the game has grown and changed. Haven't you? That doesn't mean that, you have to like it. But times change, Garrosh. WoW had that fantasy level that all kids fantasized and dreamed. Yeah, that fantasy level based entirely out of reality with things like prisoner camps and genocide and political fights and war. Yeah. Very fantastical and far removed from reality. Surely you understand why I scoff at that remark, right? Because the delusion that what you play is completely separate from real life is fucking hilarious to me. What I'm trying to say to you is that your fantasy fucking Candyland world that you live in, where you think that video games are separate from reality and are not inspired or related to it in any capacity, is not correct. Garethos and Garrosh fans are a loud group. I don't get it. Because it is in... Because it is in man's best interest to pretend that he could ever be something as savage as Garrosh. These people want to support them because they believe that taking that type of mentality makes them hard. It makes them... guys, people align their own beliefs far too rigidly with what happens in the game. Like, you can... like, there's a reason why I'm a Sargeras fan and not a Kill Jaden fan. You know? Because I can separate how, even though they're part of the same faction, how they're very different. And so, it just seems like many people are not able to make that distinction, and they think that if they align themselves with something that is portrayed as like savage and rough and hard, that that's what they are. Let me tell you something right now, chat. Do you understand what primordial humans would have done to us? Do you have any idea how weak and unprepared you would be against something like that? Do you understand that before we got to the stage that we're at now, old us would have absolutely dismembered us now? Okay? The level of like savagery in human behavior is significantly less now. Imagine if it wasn't. Like, anyone, I'm sorry, chat, I'm gonna say it, anyone that exists today that thinks they're that fucking hard isn't. Because as soon as you take a projectile weapon and point it, you already lost the plot. There was once a time where we cut each other in half with swords. There was once a time where we cudgeled each other's fucking heads in with fucking maces. Do you understand how different humans are now? But there's people that really like to think that there's some kind of like, that's what it comes off to me as, like, there's these people that think that there's some kind of primordial savage human being. They must be like Liver King fans or something. It's like, what the fuck are you doing, bro? Like, what the fuck? Like, why would you ever want to ever return to that? Yeah, like, let's go back to the Crusades and feudal Japan, and let's go back to the time of the Khans. Yeah, let's do that. Like, what? Like, what the fuck? There's a very dystopian mindset that I feel like exists among players, and it is that where they have tethered their personality to the image of the Horde or whatever, and it's like, if the Horde appears weaker to them, then they must just be with the pussy faction now, and it's like, what in the fuck is wrong with your brain? Like, what is wrong with your brain, dude? What the fuck is wrong with your brain? I can't comprehend that. Like, they're so one-sided, it's just hard for me to, like, wrap my head around it. It's just hard. I just can't comprehend that. Give a man a mask and he'll show us his true face. Wow, that's a great fucking saying right there. Wow, I like that. That's a great saying.